Hi, Ron LeGrand here. Before we get started with the podcast, I thought you might want to know that I recently recorded a 90-minute online training about how we make so much money today in the terms business. That's on pretty houses in pretty neighborhoods, not the junk houses that we have to go rehab or wholesale. I go through step by step on exactly what I and thousands of my students are doing right now to make the fastest and the easiest money in real estate without using your money or credit. If you're interested in doing just that, go to thementorpodcast.com/free training. See you there.
Welcome to the Mentor Podcast, where the most highly motivated entrepreneurs come to get their weekly dose of financial stability with host Ron LeGrand, as well as other nationally recognized thought leaders who will teach you how to get, grow, and protect your wealth.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of thementorpodcast.com. We got a very special guest for you today. His name is Frank McKinney. And Frank, believe it or not, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but there are probably a few people out there who don't know who the heck you are. So you likely know more about you than I do. So why don't you just explain to everybody who you are, and then I got a bunch of questions that I think people would ask me, and I'm going to fire them at you.
Well, first of all, you and I go back a long way. You've been at it a little longer than I, but I've been, just like everybody watching this podcast, I've been a real estate investor for over 30 years. Actually, it'll be 33 years. I did my first deal in, it's 35 years, 1986 when I did my first deal. And our paths have crossed on a number of stages over the years. So this is a big deal to me. I've never had a chance to sit down and really talk to you for an hour, and the people that look up to you and admire you. Listen, just like you, man, I started with a $50,000 flip before. Flip was a word that was used in gymnastics. It wasn't even used in real estate back when we started. And yeah. I did a little flip in Delray back in 1986, my very first one. Did hundreds of small houses. As a matter of fact, for the first 5 years of my career, I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000. Buy something undervalued, add value like nobody else, market it like nobody else, and sell it for 103% of retail. I always got top dollar. But then in the early 90s, I moved away from first-time homebuyer houses, and I jumped from a $100,000 house to a $2.2 million house on spec on the ocean here in Palm Beach County. And since that first house, Ron, I've done 44 direct oceanfront houses, some transactions, I tried just flip some land, but 44 direct oceanfront transactions with an average selling price of around $14.5 million. That's my real estate story. You know, I've written 7 books in 6 genres, and a pretty big charity over in Haiti where we build self-sustaining villages that you helped us build a brand new house on our 29th village that we'll be building later this year. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm an ultramarathon runner by hobby. I do that for fun. I run distances over 100 miles. But we're here to talk real estate. So I'm honored to be here with you, the Godfather, going all the way back to maybe the Tommy Vu or Dave Delgado days, way, way, way back. Nobody even knows who we're talking about, right?
You and I are old enough to know those names. Yes.
If you're watching this, look those guys up. Look up Tommy Vu. If you're watching this, look that guy up. He was a trip when it came to marketing real estate. Carlton Sheets.
Now, Carlton Sheets, you got to know this story. First time I went to a real estate seminar, I had to miss J.R. Ewing, Dallas, on TV, which was my hero. This was 1982. And guess who did the 2-hour promo? Carl.
Yeah. Wow.
Put me in a 2-day class.
I tell you what, God rest his soul. Tommy Vu was kind of a circus act, but somebody like Carlton Sheets was the real deal.
Yeah. In fact, I became friends with him for a lot of years, so we miss him. Anyway, I got to know, first of all, how in hell do you jump from a $200,000 house to a $14.5 million house? That takes a very special mindset.
A lot of people assume that it's all flash, and not a lot of substance. It's all sizzle and little steak. I'm a businessman first before the purple hair and all the other, extra things that come with that. What I realized, Ron, early in my career, so I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000 for 5 years. And as Malcolm Gladwell says in his book, Blink, to become an expert at anything in life, you got to put in 10,000 hours. And if you're mathematically inclined, 10,000 hours is 5 years exactly. And I became an expert at the craft of real estate. So I realized that since the Roman era, there's been two segments of the real estate marketplace that have been relatively recession proof. That being the first time home buyer, the guy who just coming off, renting a place and needed a house that he wanted to own. I never believed the American dream was meant to be rented. Believe the American dream is meant to be owned. And then the other segment of the marketplace, Ron, that was recession proof is the ultra wealthy. I mean, they've been around since the Roman era.
Yeah.
So, I was driving down A1A, which is our street, right out in front of my treehouse here. I was late for church. No, I was early for church, an hour early because I forgot to set my clocks back. And I drove by a house that was on the ocean that looked exactly like one of the crack houses I was doing. It had 2 weeks of uncollected newspapers, 2 months of uncut grass and broken windows. The roof was falling in, but it was on the ocean, Ron. And I turned to my wife and I said, honey, what's the difference between what we're doing in the crack neighborhoods versus this on the ocean? And the only difference, Ron, was 10. I bought that house for $750,000. I put about $300,000 into it and sold it for around $2 million. And I didn't look back.
What year was that, Frank?
1992.
1992. Yeah. I was just thinking, you said a while ago you didn't do a house under $100,000 for your first 5 years. Looking back, I don't think I did either. I mean, over $100,000. I don't think I did. Now, of course, we got to say a $100,000 house back then, probably a $300,000 house today.
Yeah.
It's all relative. So, what compelled you to turn around and even think about that you were worthy of buying that house probably is what set you apart from most people who would never dream of doing what you're doing. I've never done a $14 million house, and I've done thousands of them. So,
well, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why. So just what you said, like for the first part of your career, you didn't do a house worth more than $100,000. I cut my teeth on the craft of real estate. Okay, so real estate is a craft. It's more of an art form. There's a business, of course, but it's an art form. And I got really good. That first house I flipped and made a $7,000 profit. By the time I exited the first time home buyer price point of $100,000 or less, I was making $25,000 a house. So my margins were great. I got good at the craft of real estate. And then I said, well, I like artistry. Like I can't sing, I can't sculpt, I can't paint, I can't play an instrument. So I felt that I could create three-dimensional art on the ocean, on the direct ocean front, that the ultra-wealthy buyers that were living in the south of France, the Italian Riviera, Malibu, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Hawaii, and they wanted a house in Palm Beach County, I wanted to be the one to provide that three-dimensional art for them. So I took that artistry to another level. And Ron, so the average selling price is around $14.5 million that I've sold. I've done 44 of them. But if you divide that back to 1992, that's, what is that, 28, 29 years and 44 projects. So it's really a house and a half a year. So almost like, Van Gogh, Renoir, or Monet is going to paint a painting and they're going to take their time doing it. I realized it also, it vastly improved my quality of life. Like I didn't have to run around checking on 20 work crews and 20 broken promises and 20 freaking plumbers that didn't show up. I just would do a house or two a year. My margins, in my philosophy, or at least my mathematical formula in real estate, and I'm sure you have one, is acquisition basis plus improvement basis should never equal more than 65% of retail. And give or take a few percent. Like right now, we're in a seller's market, so maybe you got to bring that up if you're an investor to 70%. But yeah, that's a formula I've stuck to, and it works.
Well, that has been my formula since 1982, but that's when I'm paying cash now. I want to make that clear to everybody. I'm in the terms business, as you know, as well. It doesn't apply to that.
Right.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, if you're into a house over 70% LTV, you're in too deep. And that includes some operating capital. That's not just buy and rehab money. That's money to hold it while you're waiting. And that's actually a good checkpoint for you. If you're into it for more than that, it may not go the way you planned.
No, and that's where I'm really just when it comes to sticking to my formula. Because Ron, I mean, how many times over your career have you seen people, mostly men, not so much women, get dealitis? Like they love the deal, they love the chase, they love the pursuit, they overpay, they overimprove, and they lose money, and then they get out of the business, they become a hairdresser or something. I'm real disciplined when it comes to sticking to that formula, and it serves me well.
Me too. And first, women are just as guilty as men. And second, there's so many greater fools out there chasing these deals that I don't know where they come from, Frank. I swear. Their math makes no sense whatsoever. Grossly overpay for these properties. I don't get it. I guess they're watching a lot of these TV shows, and that's where they're getting their training from, not knowing that those are all just made up entertainment. So,
yes.
I've never seen a market like this. I've never seen a market where people pay too much for these houses like they're doing right now. The math, they just seem to ignore the math.
And you know why? Because you're right. The TV shows, the reality shows, the flip shows, everybody wants to be a real estate investor. They're not willing to sit back and wait for the right deal to come. Because right now it's hard to find a deal. I don't care where you are, unless you're in Lebanon or Beirut or something. You know, like, it's hard to find a deal in the United States. I'm patient, and you know this, and I'm sure you've told your students this over the 30, 40 years you've been in the business. You make money in real estate the day you buy the deal, not the day you sell it. And if you're patient and you sit back, the deal will come to you. In this market, I am advocating stretching that formula a little bit up to maybe 70%. But, in a buyer's market, hell, in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, I was paying less than 50 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. Well, this may shock you a little bit, but lately with this market the way it is, I've been telling everybody, when you find a house that is in absolutely excellent condition, and the only way to sell it is going to sell for cash, and your intent is to put it right back out and resell it, I'd go to 80%. Why wouldn't I pay somebody $240,000 for a $300,000 house? I'm going to list for $320,000 and get it right back out on the market, and not have to touch it, and not have to rehab it and go through all those costly entanglements. So basically, it's just stretching the rules a little bit to comply with today's market. And now, in your case, what's the most expensive house that you did?
So it's a pretty interesting story. So I bought a piece of property. This is all public record from Generoso. Well, I bought it from Lois Pope. Generoso Pope was the founder of the National Enquirer. He died. He left this about 28,000 square foot house to his wife on 300 feet and 3 acres of direct oceanfront land in Palm Beach. So she's living there by herself in 28,000 square feet. I bought it from her for $16 million. It didn't have a master bedroom. Basically, he lived in one part of the house. She lived in the other part of the house. I mean, they had a master, but it wasn't the master in that house was 4,000 square feet when I got done with it. So it didn't have a master. And Ron, they ate out every night. The kitchen was the size of my tree house for the staff to eat in. They didn't have a kitchen. Yeah. So I put about $4 million into that in 18 months worth of work. So it was a glorified flip. I mean, let's face it. I didn't build that from the ground up. I sold that the first time. So I had about 20 million into it. I sold it for 29 million, full price, and the guy paid all my closing costs. He was a .com guy back in the early 2000s. So that was, and I added 4,000 square feet. So it was 32,000 square feet. It had 12 bedrooms, 18 bathrooms, and a 20-car garage. So that guy gets bored with the house. I buy it back from him. I bought it back for 20 million bucks. So he just took a $10 million hit. And then I put it on I did some more work to it. I put it on at 50 million. I sold it for just shy of that to somebody. I wouldn't say it online here, but this guy, you would know who he was. And so I made it. I could have retired twice on that house. That guy lost the house in foreclosure. I went and tried to buy it a third time, and I got outbid by John Paul DiGiorno or whatever, the guy who founded the hair care stuff. Anyway, the tequila guy, Patron tequila guy. And he's a hair care guy too. I lost out on the bid to that. He ended up recently selling it for around $70 million. So that was the biggest deal I ever did. I could have retired on that deal by doing it twice.
Man, well, you really make the case for quality over quantity. I can tell you that. Yeah, a guy only needs to do one of those a year.
Yep. Yeah. That deal was really good to me. And when you say quality over quantity, you're right. I don't want to. I just remember how stressed I was. So, for those of you watching and you're doing your first time home buyer deals, which by the way, Ron's right, you can't buy them for $100,000 anymore unless you go out to, maybe Clewiston or Belle Glade or something. You're not going to find them in Palm Beach County, that is. But there will come a point where you might want to think about, because the competition, the more zeros that are added to the acquisition and ultimate sale price, the competition is a lot less.
That's a fact.
And so that margin that you're talking about, like you're saying, you'd go to 80%. You have to go to 80% on a first-time homebuyer house. I couldn't do that at the level that I'm buying and selling at, because if I get caught at the wrong time, like it was in 2010, I will implode. I will go bankrupt. I don't want to be eaten out of a dumpster.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah, in those price ranges. In fact, I was in 2008, Frank. I swapped stories with you on that when I had 32 development going on simultaneously in 9 different states. It was not a great time. All right. So listen, I know when you get a house ready and you put it on the market, you make a circus out of selling it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that. But I do want to know, like, what did you do? Like, you and I survived the biggest market crash in the history of real estate's history. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to tell me anyway. We can do this later, but I think people would love to know, how did you survive? Like, how do we survive that time? How did you survive having 32 developments in 9 states?
Well, first of all, there was about $50 million worth of personally guaranteed debt. And I've made payments on these things for about 1.5 years, but I just couldn't do it anymore. And what took me that long to realize, Frank, that there was no exit strategy for these projects, because the whole damn world changed. Money dried up. But more importantly than that, the exit strategies dried up. Like you just said, there was nobody to buy these things after I even built them. I had multiple different types of projects. I was going into fractional business pretty heavy, boy, isn't it? Just like overnight. And I had some retail, and I had 5 subdivisions ready to build houses on. House building stopped. So I tried to deal with the banks. Some of them dealt with me, some of them didn't. Some of them wouldn't even take the properties back, so they wound up foreclosing on them. And I got a bunch of judgments against me. And fortunately, I was smart enough to put my estate plan together well before that. So they haven't gotten anything, and they won't. But it really comes down to protecting yourself so that when things like that you can't control come along, you don't have to start all over. And that was tough times. Okay, I fought them 2-3 years. I'm still fighting 1 or 2 of them, playing the game. But you just have to keep going. Somebody once told me, you stick your head in the sand, but that puts your butt up in the air to be kicked. And you get grit. Guys like you, they don't get strong without getting beat up. And sometimes I think adversity is the best thing that can happen to people, so they can develop some backbone.
Yep. Yeah. Back, I don't mind sharing that back in 2010, I lost tens of millions of dollars, but I didn't lose everything. And what I did, I'm not a big fan, and this is where maybe we're a little different in our approach. I think you would take the same approach if you were selling houses at the price point that I'm selling them. I have to be hyper careful how I use debt. Debt around my house is a 4-letter word. Even responsible debt. There's a difference between responsible and irresponsible debt. So I never went above like a 65% LTV on any of my projects, and I still don't, no matter how free the money is, because it can turn so fast. And so when that market turned on me, like it turned on you, I was able to sell my properties. The bank was putting heat on me. I had massive lines of credit that was being called, and I was able to get out from under because I wasn't over leveraged. I took a hit. My equity took a hit, but my standing with the banks and a lot of my competitors went bankrupt. I survived to see another day.
Yeah. Well, the biggest mistake that I made was doing all developments. I should have been working on income producing properties, and I would have been able to make it through just fine. Especially properties that didn't take, apartments did just fine. Self-storage did just fine. But developing things to sell weren't doing so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took years. Literally several years went by and nothing happened to all of those properties. There's a couple of them still out there, haven't been touched to this very day.
No kidding.
Yeah. You just get through it. So I want to know how you sell these properties, because I've heard a lot of stories. I've never been to one of your sales. Robin Thompson was telling me all about it one time, one of our children, and
yep.
said it was a real spectacle. So tell me.
There's a madness. There's a lot of flash, and there's a lot of sizzle. See, here's the numbers. So behind the theatrics, there's only about 50,000 people in the world that can afford what I build out of a population of 8 billion. So I've got to get the word out there to the ultra wealthy that I just finished a $15 million house. So I can hire a realtor, which I do. I work with realtors. I actually list all my properties. I've had 3 realtors in 30 years. I'm very loyal to my realtor. And put a for sale sign in the yard and hope somebody comes by. I treat my grand unveilings as something that you would find in Vegas or on Broadway. They're very theatrical. They're very the approach is methodical, in attracting attention from the VIP buyer, the multi-million-dollar real estate producer. The top producers love coming to our shows. The media, because they'll tell my story for free across the world that we do these spectacular unveilings, and then the local politicians to make sure that we can, we're making them happy and they're there for the next one. So Ron, they're just that. They're very theatrical. They're productions. People come for the show, but the deal is I don't come with the house. The show doesn't come with the house. I'm the warm-up act. And if I've done a good job inside, I've got your attention. Typically there's 500 to 600 people at these things. When you open the door, the front door to that house, that's when the true show really starts, because that's when your breath is just taken away. So the idea of driving people to something that they anticipate, this kind of fun, maybe even bordering corny, theatrical unveiling, has really served my brand well, because people look forward to these events, and the realtors are there. They might have, I don't know what I do with my phone. Here it is. They might have their phone and say, I don't know about this guy. He probably belongs on a back lot in Broadway or Vegas, but you got to see this house. And they're calling their wealthy client. Mission accomplished. That's exactly what I want to do. And some of these houses, Ron, will sell. I mean, I'll show a house on a Tuesday and the buyer's sleeping there on a Friday, no inspections.
Yeah.
Because of that, like in my business and in our business, everybody watching this, you've got to move if you're in a buy, fix, and flip, or buy, add value, and sell. I only build new, by the way. I don't renovate anymore. You've got to move somebody from need to desire. They need a new house, or they need a house. You got to move them to desiring your property. And I might over improve a little bit. I might even overpay a little bit, but man, I can make up for that by the way I'm able to market that property.
You know what? I teach the same thing on the cheaper properties. You want to sell them, you better renovate them right. Make them feel to the emotions when they walk in the front door. If you show it more than 2 or 3 times, something wrong with the house. So I want you to tell me some of the crazy things you do at some of these showings.
Well, okay, let me do the macro thing, and then I'll go to the some of the little stunts we do. So when you're thinking about what Ron just said, like you got to do it right, you got to renovate it right to get top dollar. You want to get 103% of retail. You want to be the top selling price on a per square foot basis. You've got to heighten the experience your buyers have with their 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. You've got to heighten the experience your buyer has with those 5 senses to the state of subliminal euphoria. They become intoxicated with what you've done. And it doesn't matter if it's a $30 million house or a $300,000 house. Don't think because it's cheaper you can cut corners, because you'll pay the price for it. And we've become masters at heightening the experience your buyer has with sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, to the point where they're walking in the door on a Tuesday and they're sleeping there on a Friday. That's an art form, and I've worked 30 years to perfect not only how to appeal to the 5 senses, but Ron, I'm really good at understanding what the ultra wealthy want before they know they want it. And that's kind of what I deliver. Okay.
So you condition people about this opening way in advance. How far in advance before you actually have this open house?
Oh man, it's the longest chapter in my real estate book, the marketing chapter. So I'll have progress cameras set up at different site positions inside and outside my house, so people can watch it being built in real time. I start creating the buzz and the frenzy way in advance. And then we'll pick a theme. So you ask about some of the themes, like so the last one I did, which is pretty much my last project. I'm more or less retired from doing it now. Was I came in on a helicopter and I studied under like a stunt team, and I rappelled from the helicopter onto the rooftop. So there was a ton of people down there waiting to get in. We actually veiled. I put a veil over a house before, because the ultra wealthy want what they can't have. So I take it away from them. I put a veil over the house. In this most recent house, I veiled the house from the inside, meaning I blocked all the windows, so you couldn't see in that house for 48 hours before it was done, before we unveiled it. As I hit the roof from the helicopter, I had this flamethrower. My daughter was operating this flamethrower, and that ignited a fuse that serpentine around the house, fireworks, just fireworks, boom, 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 boom. By the time it got to the top, there was a big explosion, When that explosion took place, all the paper and all the fabric on the inside of the windows dropped. So you got to see inside, and then we opened the front door, and in they came. That was one. Another one we did. Okay.
Who came up with that idea?
Me, man. I love that stuff. I choreographed this one scene. One of the houses we did. It was right after. It was right after the bubble was bursting, and I was so tired of the negativity that I was hearing in the news that I studied under an illusionist, and I was on the roof giving this diatribe of a speech about how the only thing that's going to die tonight is this negativity, and let's be optimistic. I'm the beacon of optimism. So I'm on the roof of this house, and I had a big like if you go to a concert, there's a big screen. If you have a bad seat, you watch the big screen. I'm on the roof. There's 500-600 people on this vacant lot next door. And within milliseconds, I disappeared from the roof and I appeared underneath the ground where they were standing. I had these seismic things that I bought that actually made the ground shake, and up came a coffin, pushed through the surface of the earth. All this moss and stuff fell off the coffin, and I came out of the coffin. Right at the moment, and the people are like, how did he go from the roof 5 seconds ago to 600 feet away underneath the ground? So those are the things that people look forward to. I like doing it. I like writing the script. I had one script I wrote where I was a good pirate, and I was battling Blackbeard, and I slid down a zip line from the main house to the guest house, and we were having a gunfight. I had this pirate in a mask, this bad Blackbeard in a mask. That is at my level is what I felt was necessary. I enjoy doing it. I'm good at it. People enjoy watching it. But then on the key is just I step back, and that's where the stake comes in. The substance. People assume he's all flash and he's all sizzle. I am so much more substance. Not me, maybe, but the properties are just beautiful. And I wouldn't have done 44 if I didn't know what I was doing on the inside after these big unveilings took place.
Well, Frank, if I'm watching this, I'm asking myself, how does a guy go to low-end houses to a super high-end? I mean, you had to have a loan to do that, and you had to have equity to do that because you went to the bank to borrow the money, correct?
Yeah. So here's how I did it. So first of all, to jump to that level, I suggest you take an artist approach to your craft. If you were Van Gogh, Renoir, Monet, and you're going into the paint store, you're not buying the cheapest paint, the cheapest brush, or the cheapest palette. Like I feel as though real estate is another form of artwork in a three-dimensional form. And if you go to my website, which is just my name, Frank with a hyphen, frank-mckinney.com, click on some of the houses. You can take tours. You'll see. I mean, we put stuff in these houses. I put lava from a volcano in France that erupted 12,000 years ago. It's beautiful blue lava. I use that on the countertops. I was the first to use a jelly sphere. It's a jellyfish tank. A spherical tank that we designed with the Disney people as a fish tank for jellyfish. So, that kind of thing. So you're right, Ron, it takes money. So how did I get the money? If you go back to the first 5 years of my career, if you do the math, I was making about a 25% margin on my $100,000 deals. I'm a lot less exciting than I look. I saved my money. I did not buy it. I didn't blow it on cars or women or drugs or alcohol. My wife calls me a nerd in sheep's clothing. I am not as exciting as you might think. I saved my money. I took about 40% equity to a bank. My very first deal on the oceanfront, I said before, $750,000. So that's $300,000 I had saved up from flipping property, and I borrowed the balance from the bank. Yeah. And they were fine. I mean, a 40%, a 60% LTV, they were fine to make that deal.
Sure, they can do that today, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to package it a little differently because after the big bust in 2010, I went from the poster child of who to loan money to the poster child in the post office as like America's Most Wanted. No banks would loan me money because of what happened to the market. So now there's banks out there. Like, I'm not a big fan of hard money. At my level, there's just no way I could do hard money to eat me alive.
Yeah.
For somebody getting started, as long as you have bought that property right and you can get rid of it, like in this market, of course, I would say go ahead and do hard money because hard money rates and fees have come down a little bit. But I'm a big fan of, there's hybrids out there, Ron. You've probably seen them. It's not bank money at 2.5% or 3%, and it ain't hard money at 12%. There's lenders, there's institutional lenders that are lending at 6 and 7% that you don't have the hoops that you got to jump through. And that's where I use a lot of my money now.
They'll get their money from private individuals, not loan sharks and lenders and thieves. And of course, there's no end to that, and they get to make the rules themselves. Hey, when you put a property on the market, do you name the price, or do they come there and bid on it?
No, I name the price. Here's what I do. So let's say here's the drawback to my business, or my price point. If I decided tomorrow to do another project and I found a piece of land that I could buy right, it's 2 years from the time I buy that property until I get it to market. Because to build on the ocean is a 6-month minimum permitting process. You got 4 months on top of that for drawings. That's 10 months, and then I got to build the thing. So I'm lucky to build it in 14 months. Usually it's a 2.5 year process. So the minute I buy it and the minute I've got the design figured out, I price it. But I don't price it for 2021. I price it for 2023. So assuming in Palm Beach County we average about 11 to 12% property value appreciation every year, I'm going to put a number on that that's 20% higher than what the comps are today. And I'll grow into that number. As you know, it's easy to drop it if I'm off or if the market takes a bump between now and then. But I will stick a number on it. And we're getting, like, the last house I sold, we're getting over, on a retail number, we're getting over 20, we got about $2,300 a square foot. And that wasn't even a record. There was a house that just sold in Palm Beach for 100. This is Palm Beach proper, the town of Palm Beach, that just sold for $120 million. And it was 20,000 square feet. The guy got $6,000. It was a spec house, $6,000 a square foot on a spec deal.
Gee, man, Christmas.
Insane. Makes you want to do it. Makes me want to come out of retirement.
So you got anything working right now?
Well, yes and no. So I'm done in Florida. It's really hard to find stuff in Florida. I found a little town in North Carolina that reminds me of what Delray Beach was 30 years ago. Yeah. I bought the property there, and I'll build a white elephant. It's just how long will that elephant stay white? I want to see if I can make a market there like we made down here. All
right. Listen, I want to talk about what you're doing in Haiti with these houses for a minute, because we're already over time, but I don't care.
Tell
us what's going on.
Okay, so everybody watching here, we've been talking real estate, and that's what I refer to as my and Ron's professional highest calling, a gift God gave you to do something a little bit better than most. In our circumstance, it's real estate. And let's say you're watching this because you're into real estate. So that's your professional highest calling. You can make a lot of money if you follow what Ron teaches you how to do. But you all have a spiritual highest calling as well. And I didn't know that existed until the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was pretty depressed. I was on top of the real estate world. I just sold the most expensive spec house in the history of Palm Beach County, but I was down. I'd lost all the heart in my soul. I had all the cars in my garage and all the clothes in my closet and food in my pantry that I could ever imagine, but I was pretty depressed because I was very materialistic and consumeristic. So I went to one of my mentors, my primary mentor for 20 years, Rich DeVos, who just passed away. He was the founder of Amway and the 65th richest guy in the world, owned the Orlando Magic. He was my mentor, and he said, Frank, what's your spiritual highest calling? I had no idea what he's talking about. He says, you're in the housing business. You provide housing to the world's most wealthy who really don't need another house. What are you doing for people who can't afford a house, who are homeless? So I took his advice to heart, and we started our Caring House Project Foundation in 1998 domestically, but we've been in Haiti now, Ron, since 2003, where we build self-sustaining villages in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. To date, matter of fact, you helped us build one house in our 29th self-sufficient village. When I say help, you did build one house. So I can build a house in Haiti for $4,800. $4,800 for a concrete house for a family of 8. And our village is like, I can't stand the entitlement mentality, like the welfare mentality that exists in our country with a lot of people. I believe in Philanthro-Capitalism, taking the best of philanthropy, the best of capitalism, marrying the two, and we build self-sustaining villages. So when we're done, a village typically has 50 houses, a community center, a school, a church, a clinic, renewable food, clean drinking water, and some form of free enterprise that we sprinkle over the top of that village so it can be self-sustaining. And to date, 29 villages later, all of those villages, we're 29 for 29. They're all self-sustaining. Over 13,000 kids that were, if this was a hamburger, that were eating mud flavored with bouillon and lemon juice. They're eating dirt flavored with lemon juice. We've got 13,000 kids now that have a better life in these 29 villages by the self-sustaining, self-sufficient approach we bring to building over there. So I found my spiritual highest calling, and I'm a Christian. There's a passage in the Bible, chapter from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 48, to whom much is entrusted, much is required. And I've been entrusted with a lot with the success I've had in real estate, and I felt it was incumbent upon me to be a responsible steward for those blessings God had given me. And that gave me a whole new lease on my life, my career, everything. And so, Ron, we're doing great. We can always use, we're not stopping.
All right, well, tell me, if we got listeners watching, what can we do to build a house for you?
So the easiest thing to do is go to, and write this down or remember this, very simple, CHPF. So C, Charlie, House, Project, Frank. CHPF.org. And you can see there's 6 common donations that people make, from $20 to what Ron did at $4,800. And there's 70 other different donation options. You can see every single village we built. There's a Google Maps presentation of where the villages are located, how many houses we built, how many kids were affected. That's what I would ask that you do, is go to chpf.org, make a donation from 20 all the way up to whatever you can afford, and we will take that over there and build our 30th self-sufficient village.
Okay, perfect. And by the way, is there a way on there to tell you who sent them? Where they hear about you?
No, not unless we did a targeted campaign that we did it within a certain time.
Just put a question on there. Where did you hear about this project?
All right, I can do that.
Then you'll know where your donors are coming from.
I can do that. Thank you. I will do that.
We're going to get you some.
I mean, let's see how many people that follow Ron and listen to Ron and learn from Ron. How many houses can we build over there? We just did an event in Tampa where we built 30 houses out of a room of 70 people.
Well,
typically,
because you won't know where it came from unless you fix that real quick.
Yes.
I'm gonna make everybody watching the deal. Yeah, you listening? You guys watching this, if you're a member of our Gold Club, if you will go build a house, that's $4,800, right? And send us evidence that you sent the money in to build the house. We're going to send you 500 Gold Club points, which is $500 for information point. $1 a point. They can use it for a lot of stuff. Just because. Just let us know that you got to build a whole house now. I ain't going to do this for no $20 donation. And many of you watching can do just exactly that, should do just exactly that. And I assume it's tax deductible.
It's tax deductible. Listen, if you're in the housing business, you know what it costs to provide housing for a family in the United States. If you know, now you know you can do a house. You can build a house in Haiti for $4,800 that is concrete. It's got a metal roof. It's got 2 rooms. It's got a kitchen. It's got a microflush toilet. It's got solar for $4,800 for a family of 8. That you can do.
Okay. So you guys go do that. One more time for that website.
CHPF.org.
chpf.org. Okay.
Yep.
You've been a pleasure to interview, man. You are very inspiring, and man, I got to tell you, for what you're doing for those children in Haiti, makes you one incredible human being.
Well, I'm honored to be with you because you started so many careers. I remember Robin Thompson, and a lot of people call you the millionaire maker. And this is the longest we've ever had a chance to talk in 30 years. So this is great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she's the one to introduce me to you, so I can be over for that. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, sir.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Ron. Everybody, thank you.
Okay.
That's all for this edition of the Mentor Podcast. To connect with Ron and learn how you can attain financial freedom, as well as up-to-date strategies to grow and protect your wealth based on today's discussion, go to www.connectwiththementor.com.